Watch right now in the Front News project. Ukrainian drones have reached Tatarstan. 270,000 tons of enemy ammunition are vividly burning. The defeat of the Russian army near Pokrovsk. 250 occupiers have been eliminated. Unique footage of the failed Russian assault. True hell in Kiev, 12 dead, the most massive attack on the capital. Fiery, hot, and blazing footage from the front line. Watch right now. The fourth year of full-scale war, a war that Vladimir Putin and his pack unleashed on Ukrainian soil. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom continues. Greetings, this is Front News. With you is Volodymyr Tymoshenko. The next 30 minutes will bring you the truth about the war, which our journalists gather from the hottest battle zones. So, are you ready? Then, let's begin. And we start right away with the most terrifying, a brutal, the largest missile drone attack on the capital of Ukraine since the beginning of the war. 12 people were killed. In Kyiv, the Sviatoshinsky district, located in the northwest of the city, suffered the most from the strike. It was there that a multi-apartment residential building was destroyed by a missile hit, and neighboring buildings were damaged. All the details are further in the pain-filled report from our colleagues at the television news service.
It's 11 in the morning. Rescuers are still clearing the debris in 3 districts of Kyiv: Obolonsky, Sviatoshinsky, and Shevchenkivsky. We are currently in the Sviatoshinsky district, where the consequences of the Russian night attack are almost the most severe. Behind me is a completely destroyed 2-story house, which was likely targeted by missiles. And next to it is also a destroyed 5-story building. Residents are currently not allowed into the area as the search for people continues. A lot of houses around have also been damaged, about 2 dozen.
At the moment, we can clearly state that there are 8 fatalities. The 9th person, whom we consider deceased, consists of body remains that are currently also undergoing forensic examination. And we have more than 70 people injured, 44 of whom are in medical facilities.
Currently, about 100 rescuers are working here. They are searching for missile debris, and investigative actions are being conducted. Here, dog handlers are working with dogs. Psychologists are working, and of course, right next to the tape, many people are waiting for their relatives, waiting for their missing loved ones. We also met a group of people who are waiting for their loved ones. They are teenagers. Their friend is somewhere there on the 1st floor. At least he was there at night. And so far, he hasn't made contact.
I don't know what's happening with him.
Is he your friend?
Yes, I hope he's alive.
Now, the rescuers have asked everyone to remain silent for a few minutes. They are listening for sounds under the slabs. Possibly some signs, maybe someone is knocking, to hear anything and find people who are still waiting under the rubble. Thanks to these moments of silence, the rescuers managed to hear a voice under the rubble. Within half an hour, they managed to pull a young man out from under the debris. It's not the friend of the group of friends who are waiting. It's a neighbor. He lived on the 1st floor. The 29-year-old man was trapped under the rubble and remained there for 6 hours. He was successfully extricated and has now been hospitalized with multiple injuries.
He responded to the rescuers' voices, and that's how we determined his location under the rubble, and gradually we managed to get him out. Unfortunately, there is a high probability that there may still be bodies of the deceased under the debris. There might also be survivors. We are still searching.
According to preliminary information from the minister, missiles, presumably Iskanders, hit this area. At the moment, law enforcement has already opened a criminal case, but the search and rescue operation continues. There is still hope that there are survivors under the rubble waiting to be rescued.
Yes, Russian war criminals are only capable of terrorizing, killing, and ruining the lives of peaceful Ukrainians. Meanwhile, on the front, there is another route of Russian infantry in the Kupiansk direction. Soon, we We'll show you these footage. Also, a video has appeared online showing coffins of Russian soldiers who fought in the Kherson direction. It is there that the enemy also suffers colossal losses. Meanwhile, Ukrainian armed forces drones have reached Tatarstan. The attack was so effective that even restrictions were imposed on the operations of the airports in Nizhnekamsk and Kazan. This is while the 51st Grau arsenal in the Vladimir region is still burning. There, up to 270,000 tons of enemy ammunition were destroyed, just to give you an idea. All the details in our next report.
The Russian occupiers cannot hide, and the Ukrainian Defense Forces are destroying the enemy. Ukrainian Armed Forces sappers struck with a vampire UAV at a ground shelter where the enemy was hiding. And this is already in the Kharkiv direction, where Ukrainian fighters used a UAV to destroy a platoon of occupiers and enemy equipment. And this means that the families of Russian occupiers who went to war against Ukraine continue to receive coffins. This time, the unpleasant package came from the Kherson region. To justify the losses and supposedly show their strength, the occupiers have intensified shelling of populated areas. First, they drop aerial bombs, and then they cover the same area with artillery.
The Russians are attacking exclusively civilian infrastructure in the controlled territories of the Kherson region. Primarily, this involves striking energy infrastructure facilities. In other words, they are trying to create chaos, panic, and distrust towards the actions of central and local authorities. It should be noted that the Russian side's ability to conduct large-scale landing operations in this area has been reduced to almost zero.
And the Russian occupation army does not cease its attempts to capture Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region. However, despite all the efforts that the Russians have made over the past months, their attempts are in vain. The invaders have not been able to approach the city.
Currently, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have pushed the occupiers back by 2 to 2.5 kilometers from Pokrovsk, from their previously held positions. Moreover, there is a prospect of restoring the location of the Ukrainian Defense Forces in the Mezhova area. In addition, on the second flank, in the area of the settlement of Shevchenko, the Ukrainian Defense Forces are preventing the enemy from expanding for their zone of presence.
And while the Russians are making new plans, the Ukrainian armed forces are taking action. The Ukrainian army is already deploying the latest robots on the front, writes the Telegraph. One of the representatives of combat technology is the robot Zmai. In 2025, Ukraine plans to deploy up to 15,000 similar platforms.
This is a ground robot, and it is designed for demining areas. It should be noted that according to Ukrainian specialists, the technical characteristics of this robot allow it to clear up to 2 hectares of mine territory. It moves close to the ground, neutralizes mines, and is remotely operated by an operator from a protected shelter. This minimizes the possibility of direct impact on the operator of this ground robot.
Ukraine is focused on creating robots on a large scale that will assist the armed forces on the front line. An example of this is a separate unit of the Unmanned Systems Force.
The Ukrainian side is scaling up the direct use of combat drones in real combat conditions. In addition, the Ukrainian side is taking an innovative approach to the development of unmanned aerial vehicles. This refers to FPV drones, which are intended for the direct neutralization of Russian reconnaissance drones, and, accordingly, Geran-2 strike drones.
But in Russia, it was also very loud and bright again.
Oh, hurry! Wow, that was amazing!
One of the largest ammunition depots is on fire, the 51st Grau Arsenal.
According to some reports, this warehouse can store about 270,000 tons of ammunition, artillery shells, rockets for MLRS, SAM components, and tactical missiles like Tochka-U.
The distance from the line of combat contact to the 61st Grau arsenal itself is about 530 to 550 kilometers. Notably, the distance from the arsenal itself to the capital of the occupying country is about 60 kilometers. It should be noted that this area is the most saturated with air defense and missile defense systems.
This is already the fourth Grayu arsenal destroyed since the 24th year. In total, there are 11 such facilities in Russia.
These are colossal losses for the Russian side. It should be noted that, according to estimates by the Ukrainian intelligence community, after the destruction of 3 Grau depots in 2024, the intensity of fire damage by the Russian Federation decreased significantly. If previously there were up to 40,000 shells per day, then after the destruction of the Grayu depots, this figure decreased to approximately 16 to 17,000.
It would be better for the Russians to strengthen their leaky air defense, as the number of depots is becoming fewer and fewer. And who knows, maybe the 5th one is already in the crosshairs. Now let's analyze the operational situation on the Novopavlovsk front. The bloody frenzy of the enemy's army continues here as well. On the Novopavlovsk front, the enemy launched 15 attacks yesterday in the areas of the settlements of Konstantinopol, Razliv, Skudnoy, Revnopol, and Novodarovka. Meanwhile, the number of injured in Zaporizhzhia has risen to 42. Among the wounded are 7 children. The day before, Russian occupiers struck the city with 2 aerial bombs. One hit a high-rise building in a residential area, killing a woman. Watch all the details in the report by TSN journalist Kira Oves.
Work to eliminate the enemy strike is still ongoing in the city. We are now next to the high-rise building that was hit by a Russian aerial bomb. This particular apartment was at the epicenter of the strike. Part of the bedroom is simply gone. Luckily, no one was home at the time of impact. It came right into your apartment, didn't it?
Well, it's a bit lower. There's a window there. Only the balcony was really affected.
Emergency work continues for the 2nd day in a row. Currently, utility workers are piling up construction debris. The rescue service is inspecting the destroyed building. The apartments on the upper floors are completely destroyed. All balconies and windows are shattered.
We will now dismantle the slabs that are hazardous and overhanging after the missile strike. And, well, we're collecting debris, helping residents access their apartments and remove some belongings where necessary and where it's critical.
The Russians struck the city with 2 guided aerial bombs in the middle of the day. The day before, one of the bombs hit an infrastructure facility and the other hit here in a densely populated residential area. The number of casualties increased every hour. At least 10 buildings and an educational institution were damaged. The children survived because about 100 school children were taken to shelter by the teachers in time. Only the father of one of the students was injured while he was on his way to the school. He was injured. His arm was hurt by a fragment. Our nurse provided him with first aid, and then the police sent him to the hospital. The explosion was very powerful. The children were scared, but we have already gotten used to these circumstances. Some were hugged, with others we joked. Natalia, a resident of the damaged building, came to the shattered apartment to get clothes for her husband. He and their grandson are currently in the hospital. Their apartment is on the 7th floor, right below the impact epicenter. The 16-year-old teenager has a concussion, and he is supposed to be discharged from the hospital today. However, Natalia's husband will remain under medical supervision. He is in very serious condition. The surgery lasted 7 hours. And how is his condition now?
He says he's okay. He called me himself, says he's okay, but I don't know what's going on with his eye. It's unclear.
Did his eye get injured?
Yes, the eye. The eye was all covered in blood.
Yes, the eye was all covered in blood. An artery in his left arm was severed. But we quickly bandaged it with my grandson. Currently, there are 14 injured people remaining in the city's hospitals, including 5 children. They have mine-explosive injuries, concussions, bruises, and lacerations. Among the injured is a pregnant woman. 4 patients are in serious condition.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Well, now we move to the much-suffering Pokrovsk frontline. Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. On the Pokrovsk front, our defenders stopped 56 assault actions by the aggressor near the settlements of Kalinov, Zeleny Pol, Novotoretske, Yelizavetivka, Lisivka, Zverevo, Uspenivka, Nadivka, Kotlyarivka, and Andriivka. Yes, during the week, the enemy attempted to advance on many fronts, particularly on the Pokrovsk front. In fact, 240 Russians were killed, another 30 wounded, nearly 100 motorcyclists and more than 20 armored vehicles were destroyed. These are the losses of the enemy who tried to advance towards the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway. And it was the armed forces of Ukraine that once again prevented the Russian army from realizing its aggressive plans. How exactly this happened will be reported and shown by TSN correspondent Yulia Kirienko. Let's watch.
2 companies of Russians on motorcycles and armored vehicles in a single assault. The occupiers attempted to break through our front on the Pokrovsky direction. The Russians tried to push through to the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway to cut off communication routes between 2 groups of Ukrainian troops. If they had succeeded, the situation around Pokrovsk and in the Toretsk area would have become significantly more complicated. However, 2 companies of occupiers now lie in the fields of Donbass. 240 Russians were destroyed and another 30 were wounded. Nearly 100 motorcycles and more than 20 armored vehicles were burned. This was one of the largest enemy assaults in the sector in recent times and was successfully repelled.
The enemy deployed a large amount of equipment in the battle, this time mostly combat armored vehicles and motorcycles, as well as about 2 companies of personnel. But our defenders demonstrated true professionalism and resilience.
And this is already a large-scale mechanized assault. The occupiers are trying to break through in the Novopavlovsk direction. They launched an attack with more than 24 armored vehicles, several tanks, over a dozen BMPs with infantry, and they burned in the fields. Every single one. Enemy infantrymen who jumped off the burning armored vehicles were tracked and destroyed by FPV drones operated by the pilots of the 71st Jaeger Airborne Brigade. In anticipation of that enemy assault, Ukrainian soldiers managed to secure new positions and push back the Russians in the village of Dnipronehia in the Volnovakha district. Consequently, the Vuhledar tactical group stated the settlement is under the control of the defense forces. However, the enemy has not stopped their assaults there and is trying to regain what was lost.
Have you already moved up according to the task?
And this is our observation drone capturing the movement of 2 occupiers in the area of the village of Zaporizhzhia in the Donetsk region. They are the only ones left after the latest enemy assault was just defeated.
An assault group of 7 people is moving towards our positions.
Ukrainian FPV drones are already flying towards them. The occupiers are trying to hide in the still not too dense fresh greenery. And even among the branches, our pilots see them and immediately destroy them.
3-pointer. One is moving, one is twitching his legs.
In these frames, in fact, it's the disposal of a Russian soldier by his own commanders. Otherwise, it can't be called anything else, say the warriors. Every enemy assault soldier knows, even if he's wounded, his own won't take him. Here's the proof of that. An occupier, shredded by the debris of our drone, still moves forward leaning on a stick because there's no way back. His own will kill him there.
Today, last night we had another suicide case, where after the operation he just shot himself. He didn't think about going back. They don't have the thought of running away. They just move forward, that's it. There are no other options. Either they die here or there. Well, that's how it seems to me. How else to understand their actions if they still move forward despite their injuries?
Here are the shots of the nighttime soldier's suicide. So a Russian decided to help the Ukrainian army by shooting himself and saving our drone's ammunition.
You can see him lying down, turning over the rifle. And before that, 3 drops were made on him. He got fed up with everything and decided to shoot himself. Well, maybe death is easier that way than from the drops. Probably not as painful.
The life expectancy of a Russian assault trooper in such foot assaults is 2 hours, say Ukrainian soldiers. From the moment our drones spot the enemy group to the stage when Russian soldiers are allowed into the so-called kill zone. This is the area where our strike drone can reach. But despite the losses, Kremlin commanders still push their subordinates forward, sparing neither equipment nor showing any pity for their soldiers.
Well, now it's time to analyze the situation on the Kharkiv and Kupiansk fronts. The enemy is becoming more aggressive here as well. On the Kharkiv front, the aggressor attempted 4 times to break through the defensive lines of our defenders in the areas of the settlements of Vovchansk and Vovchansky Khutori. On the Kupiansk front, there was 1 attack by the invaders yesterday. Our defenders halted the enemy's assault actions in the area of Zaporizhzhia. 50 wounded and 9 dead. These are the consequences of the strike on the city of Marhanets in the Dnipropetrovsk region. A Russian FPV drone attacked a bus in the morning, which was transporting workers to their shift at the Enterprise. More than 30 people have been hospitalized. The condition of 4 is extremely critical. Details that from TSN journalist Olga Pavlovska.
For 8 women and 1 man, this trip to their shift became their last. They died from the strike of a Russian drone. The bus, which was heading to the mine, was full of workers, many of whom were women, because the men are at the front.
Bang. Explosion.
Bang. Explosions. At first we didn't even understand what it was. We thought something happened to the bus, and then we saw people lying down. I think they were already not alive. It's very scary because, you see, there was a person standing next to you. We were driving to work and he's no longer there.
And now they're gone.
Injured people were helping each other to get out through the broken windows. They say they were afraid of a second Russian strike.
Such a strong explosion.
There was such a strong explosion. I immediately thought that a tire had burst. I was sitting behind the driver. Then I realized what had happened. There was immediate shock. We climbed out through the windows.
The Russians attacked the bus with an FPV drone from the other side of the Kakhovka reservoir, opposite Marhanets, temporarily occupied Enerhodar. The Russians constantly strike from there at the Nikopol district of Dnipropetrovsk region, using the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as cover.
Then I can't understand why the stink.
I can't understand what they want from us and why they came to us. They broke into someone else's house. Of course, we need to defend ourselves from them.
More than 36 people are injured in hospitals, 4 of them in serious condition. To save the lives of those with severe injuries, they were urgently transported to Dnipro.
One person, who is 59 years old.
A man who is 59 years old is currently in critical condition. Our resuscitators have already restarted his heart, but there is no place on his body that hasn't been hit by shrapnel.
In Marhanets, a 3-day mourning period for the deceased has been declared starting today.
But now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kramatorsk and Toretsk fronts. Let's be honest, these are sacred targets for Putin and his entourage. Accordingly, the situation here is traditionally tense to the limit. On the Kramatorsk front, 1 skirmish was recorded yesterday in the area of Klishivka. On the Toretsk front, the enemy carried out 25 attacks in the areas of the settlements of Dakhne, Primske, Toretsk, and Leonidivka. It lays mines in the territory instead of sappers, delivers food and ammunition to our trenches on the front line, although soldiers used to do this. And it also destroys the shelters of the Russian army. All this is about the Vampire drone. It is one of the largest hexacopters. And by the way, no matter how hard the Russians tried to create something similar, in 3 years of full-scale war, they failed. However, the 25th Siechislav Brigade managed to hold Pokrovsk. How this drone helps our defenders, including in the Pokrovsk direction, and why foreigners join the army to work with it, will be explained and shown by TSN special correspondent Yulia Kirienko.
From a huge box, the pilot crew takes out a giant drone. This is the Vampire, one of the largest unmanned aerial vehicles in our forces. It is this drone that the Russians have nicknamed Baba Yaga because of its piercing sound.
They hear it and shout Baba Yaga, and they are scared, and it's not without reason.
The warriors say they are afraid for a reason, because this drone alone destroyed several Russian positions overnight. It also constantly destroys their equipment and mines the area in front of our positions, so that enemy vehicles and infantry are blown to pieces if they attempt an assault.
We dropped a lot of ammunition on positions on houses that were once civilian but are now occupied by the Russians. We dropped a lot of ammunition there, and this makes the job easier for the infantrymen who are stationed nearby.
The specific task of these pilots is night raids to burn everything that might resemble a shelter for the Russians, so that if the occupiers dare to attack, they won't be able to find a place to hide, and then they can be easily destroyed by the FPV drone pilots team. Even though the guys were on duty the previous night, they are not sleeping now, preparing their copter for another night mission. In fact, such a hexacopter, in reality, the Russians have been unable to reproduce such a hexacopter in 3 years of full-scale war. It is only available to us. Vampire not only performs combat missions, such as dropping munitions into Russian trenches to destroy them, but also delivers humanitarian cargo, which is extremely important, including ammunition and provisions to trenches that our soldiers cannot reach every day. Thus, it also saves their lives. Such a team of pilots is rarely found in the Ukrainian military, and that's because they communicate with each other in 2 languages.
I am from Ukraine.
I am from Chicago.
We have
The United Kingdom.
Kim is from the United States and at the beginning of the full-scale war volunteered for Ukraine. And Mac is British. Even before 2022, he lived in Odessa for a long time, had every opportunity to go home, but stayed to join the army because he loves his Ukrainian wife. And he's here for her.
I absolutely love Ukraine. I don't want to live in Britain anymore. Indeed, I want to live here.
He also greatly respects Ukrainian cuisine. Do you like borscht?
Yes.
They are finishing equipping the Vampire. Mac needs to check the mounting on it because tonight he has to carry explosive fabs weighing 8 kilograms each.
It's gone.
By the way, these munitions are Ukrainian-made and work very well against Russian shelters. Exactly what's needed on the Pokrovsk direction, says Rambo. And he is preparing special revenge FABs. For Kryvyi, says the warrior. This is the hometown of the paratrooper, where his wife and son are waiting for him.
My wife, Chula Vibuhi.
My wife heard the explosions, children died. We will take revenge. We will sign them and let the Russians receive these gifts. These explosives will fly to the basements where the occupiers are concentrated. It's completely unfair that they have such weapons, which we don't have, and we have to fight with what we can. But we are very good at it. Where the 25th Brigade stands, they will not pass, that's for sure. I can responsibly state that to you.
That's all for today. But very soon, on the Front News program, there will be new unique materials from our journalists, from the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.